Hi, and welcome back to Hope Regained. I'm your host, Christiane Boudreau, and we're here today to talk about setting healthy boundaries. I'm sure you've heard about this topic plenty, or at least in passing, and if you haven't, well, you'll be hearing it here for the first time. What are boundaries? What does it mean? Some people aren't really clear, and so we'll just review it in case you're not very familiar with it. The easiest way to explain it is it's the personal limits that we set for ourselves, and those limits that we also put up with others around us. So, family members, for example, that we love and care about, we don't always recognize that we have the boundaries. But if there's certain things that we just are limited to, then it's what we say no to, or what we say, I just can't do that for you right now. That's an example of a boundary. There are physical space boundaries, and that can be a little bit different. So that means maybe your safe spot is here when people come in close proximity, and for others, it'd be further out. That's the physical space. You don't want somebody touching you, anything like that. That's okay. That's your boundary. Where do you feel comfortable? Where's that safe space? What am I willing to do or not do? Understanding those things. That's part of your limits, I guess, the easiest way to say it. Some people, they change. They have a negotiable and non-negotiable is one way to look at it. So if you say, I'm willing to do X, but I'm not willing to do Y, but in certain circumstances and situations or with certain people, then okay, that's negotiable. We could discuss it. So understanding negotiable and non-negotiable. Most of the time, your boundaries will be attributed to your morals and values, as well as your comfort levels, your safety zones. It can be with regards to your moods sometimes and being aware of that. Boundaries are usually set with friends, family, work, with strangers, various different situations. And we can also set boundaries for ourselves so that we can be mindful of what we're comfortable with and where we need to set our own limits to make sure we stay within those guidelines, to not have yucky feelings afterwards. It's part of knowing ourselves. You get to decide your boundaries for yourself. No one gets to decide these for you. They're very personal. And it's okay if it's different than what somebody else expects. This is about you. And since we're looking at how to enjoy and love our life that much more and make the best of it, it's about learning what is best for you and understanding where your limits are for you. They can change. They don't always have to stay the same. It depends where you are in your life and what you're going through. So just because you set a boundary in place today doesn't mean it has to be set in stone tomorrow. It's about knowing and understanding the hardcore lines and where you're at for the day and when to change it if circumstances change or who you are as a person changes as you grow. So how do we identify these boundaries for ourselves? Well, a lot of times it's about taking the time to check our feelings, understanding our emotions, what makes us feel good, what makes us uncomfortable. That's the best way to look at it to start with, the simplest way. And if we don't have the self-awareness built up yet, it's about learning that. So we need to take stock of it, take note. When we're writing in our journal, we can always look back and say, during the day, this happened and it made me feel, and that will help you discover what boundaries you need to set for yourself. When you feel uncomfortable, you know that's an area that either A, it's a no-go zone, and that's okay, or B, we're uncomfortable because we haven't learned how to step outside of those comfort zones that would help us grow. And when we're ready to do that. So that's one way to kind of gauge that area of uncomfortable. And we need to pay attention to how we feel about actions. So the actions of others, does it make us feel uncomfortable with our emotions or physically? Understand that. What about our own actions? When we do X, how does it make us feel? When we do Y, physically, how does it make us feel? That could be a matter of even exercise. I know that I have limitations with old bones and joints. So when I do this, it makes me feel like this. So I need to set a limit for myself and not to go overboard so that I don't feel so great the next day. I want to feel my best. Then some things that we need to understand as well is what different boundaries are. And a way to explore that, it's as simple as reading, and we'll provide some links for books, really great books out there today to help learn and explore it deeper. You can read on the internet. There's various websites. You have to be careful. You want to make sure that you look at various ideas and not just pick one and stick to it. There are videos, and we'll provide links as well, that help give you that jaunt in your mind to discover or to look deeper and understand more what a boundary might look like for you. You could talk to friends. That's another way too. Ask them, what are your boundaries? Maybe they're not clear to you about what their boundaries are. Well, it's a good learning adventure for them as well, because part of those boundaries is clearly communicating them so people around you understand. So talk to your friends. It's an open discussion. Somebody that's close to you, discuss them. It helps you discover them. Sometimes when you air them out loud, as well as writing in your journal. Don't be afraid. Find someone you trust. Identify your core values as a person. Do you know what those are? Some people don't. We haven't paid attention. We've been blurred by everything else around us and taken on board everybody else's junk. So we need to set that aside. Sit down. Again, as part of your journal, write down what you feel your core values are. You may see an idea in a movie. Oh, yeah, that triggers a response. Write it down. Keep that notebook handy for yourself. Write down the ideas, and then you'll get an idea of more what is really important to me. How do they correlate with my feelings? How do they work together? And that's part of the road of discovering where your boundaries might be. Another thing for you will be your priorities in life. I know what my priorities in life are. My family is extremely important to me, and my friends are my family too. So having time with them is something that I really, really depend on. And when work starts cutting into it, well, that's exceeding the limits of my boundaries. And I have to set fine lines there. I don't want to have regrets. We don't want to realize our end of time is coming and we regret. So setting those boundaries are very important. They have to be realistic, and that's something we need to look at for our situation. And sometimes we have to make changes. But that's important to understand. What are your priorities in your life? Can you identify them? Reflect on past experiences. If you have a look back, what are the past experiences that you've had and the responses and feelings that you got from them? That can help you discover what your boundaries are. Did something make you feel bad? Does something make you feel good? Try to separate the response you receive from others and just focus on you for a minute. This is part of our self-commitment, that we're working on being the better self, the better version. So look at the past. That really gives us a key as to where we are today, as well as building for what we want for the future. So, do you have any current boundaries in place? Do you have blocks? somewhere to not have them? What's keeping you for putting healthy boundaries in place? What are those boundaries that you do have? Are they clear for other people around you? Do you communicate them? Boundaries are great, but they only really work if you communicate them clearly. How can anybody sit there and have expectations or understand where you're coming from if you're not clearly communicate them? Clearly communicating is a big, big key. And it's just like any other friend of yours. If they don't communicate with you how they're feeling, how are you going to know? Last time I checked, we're not mind readers. I know I'm not, at least. And if you are, great. Share those skills with me, please. Not that I want to know everything, but sometimes it sure would help. If you don't have those boundaries in place, or you haven't communicated them clearly, why? What's stopping you? Sometimes, or most often than not, it's a feeling. Are you afraid? Are you afraid of the response you're going to get from somebody? When you have a clear boundary that you've set down, somebody asks you for something and you say, no, I'm sorry. Now, you don't have to be mean about it, but if you say, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable with that, that's tactful. It's a fine way to say it. The difference is you might not be able to control the reaction from the other person. And that's what scares a lot of us. We can't cope with that. We're people pleasers. We see that quite a bit. I know there's racing thoughts that go on in your mind afterwards. Perhaps, oh my goodness, did I do the right thing? Are they going to hate me now? They're not going to like me. That's definitely a people pleaser. But if you're clear about it in advance and you express yourself and let everybody know where you're comfortable, where your zones are, then if they come and try to cross those lines, that's on them. It's okay for you to be straightforward and express yourself. In fact, that's what gives you healthy relationships. That's the beginning and the foundation. Clear communication. I know we often have difficulty saying no, and that's a big, big one. And we need to look at that more in depth and understanding it. But look at it this way. Sometimes it's about saying yes to yourself. So if you have to say no, you feel guilty, you feel horrible, try to look at it in a positive light. In that case, in that particular situation, it could be a matter of saying yes to yourself. So if you spin it around in your head, it might not be so tough. Stop second guessing yourself. You've got to validate your own feelings and emotions. It's okay. They're yours. You own them. I know I really struggled so much when I was younger with saying no. I was a people pleaser. I felt really uncomfortable with it, and any uncomfortable situations I tried to avoid, or I would just give in because I felt it's easier. But it put me in some really bad situations. And in all honesty, it didn't make me feel that great. And at the end of the day, well, I wasn't much good to anybody around me. So there's two sides to that. You can set up those clear boundaries in the beginning, be clear with yourself where they are, not have any misconceptions, and maybe people will respect you a bit more, and you can respect yourself a bit more. It's easier on them. Just like if I were to come across a friend who was very clear what their boundaries were, it's easier for me to have that relationship with them. I know the no-go zones. I'm not going to cross the path and worry about, did I hurt their feelings, or am I stepping on toes that I shouldn't? I think it's really important in any relationship. So stop second guessing. Let's get to know ourselves better and validate how we feel. So at the end of this practice, as we're setting up our boundaries, we say, are there benefits? Well, of course there are. There's so many different healthy benefits to this. It's core, as I said before, to developing healthy relationships. If you're in a relationship that's not healthy, that person is not going to respect your boundaries. And that's a clear identification that it could be toxic. If it's toxic, do you really need that in your life? You want healthy relationships, and the best foot to start off with is by communicating clear, healthy boundaries. It gives yourself more self-awareness, more self-confidence. We're comfortable with what we're portraying. We're well aware of what our limits are. It makes it easier going forward. It may be a challenge in the beginning because we're not used to doing it and working with them, but in the end, it will give you so much more self-confidence. It will reduce your stress and anxiety. How? Well, you don't put yourself in situations that you're not comfortable in. That's your own limits, your own healthy boundaries, as well as clearly defining them for other people, making it easier to walk away when you know it's not good for you. By that, it's removing some of the negativity, and that will reduce the stress, the anxiety. It helps you avoid that discord and bad situations. Hey, there's always a benefit to that. It develops skills in assertiveness and communication. Relationships, communication is key. And being assertive and letting people know what you need helps them. It stops the guessing games. We're not trying to figure everything out. It's so much better. Trust me, clear communication solves a lot of problems in the beginning before they grow into big ones. So we can start with that. Also, it's a lot less frustration, confusion, and less room for resentment. Again, if we're not telling somebody how we feel about something and they keep doing something that's negative, that makes you feel bad, all you do is push it down. It builds resentment. Eventually, that's got to go somewhere and could explode, and then hurtful things get said. It's not a good feeling. And sometimes those relationships can't be repaired after that. If you're expressing yourself on a regular basis and letting people know what you need from them and what you need for yourself, there's no room for that resentment to build up. It doesn't happen. You're communicating clearly. It's time to be an adult. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to those that you love. There's no confusion. You're very clear about what you need in your life. And they understand. So a lot less mistakes happening there. You don't want to get frustrated. It wastes so much of your energy. Life is too short. I know that once I started setting those healthy boundaries in my life, I could communicate them without crying. Instead of getting frustrated and bursting into tears, and it could be quite the surprise for the other person in that relationship. And they can get confused too, because you've always allowed these things to happen and never said anything. How do you expect them to react? They're not going to know any better. That's not fair on them either. So it's a two-way street. It reduces unrealistic expectations. Hey, I have expectations for myself. I have to set healthy boundaries. Where are my limits? It's okay. Again, that baseball bat comes up. I beat myself up over the head because of the high expectations I sometimes set. If I set those healthy boundary limits for myself, then I can bring myself back down a few pegs when I need to. without taking out the baseball bat. Well, that's the same thing in a relationship. Somebody can put you on a pedestal. And really, that's not fair to either of you. You're never going to live up to that. Those expectations can be unrealistic, and somebody's going to get let down in the process. So you can eliminate that with clear boundaries. The expectations won't be so out of this world because everybody understands each other. With removing the negativity and toxicity, it opens the door for that healthy, fun, laughter, much more relaxed day-to-day relationship with the people that you care about. And look, if they don't understand and they're not willing to work with you, or they become demanding, you really have to reevaluate that relationship you're having. I know for a fact that once I started to adopt healthy boundaries, it was sad. Yes, I had to eliminate some people from my life. And it took a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months to get over it. It's a loss. And sometimes that person will have a realization and come back and you can find common ground. But if you don't, at the end of the day, I can laugh more. I'm more relaxed. If you're tiptoeing around somebody on eggshells, that's not healthy. It's holding you back. It's holding them back. It's not serving a purpose for either one of you. Not everybody is going to like us. You're not going to like everybody either. We're all going to have differences. And sometimes things are uncomfortable in a relationship. The difference is knowing when it's something that can be worked through or it's just toxic. So what's the self-commitment we can work on to achieve our healthy boundaries? Well, we could start by making that list. Let's start working on self-discovery, understanding what those limits are. Set your list of personal boundaries. Write them down. We can have them spinning around in our head, but I'll tell you, writing them down makes them more concrete, real. We can look at them. When we can look at them when they're written down, we could say, is this realistic? Do we need to expand on it? Scale back? Maybe move it around a bit? Chart it out? It's something that can change over time. So this can be a living, breathing list. And as we grow as a person, that list can change. Make a commitment to yourself and to others. Here's the key. You want somebody to respect your boundaries. It's not going to happen unless you're willing to respect theirs. Again, guys, this is a two-way street. If you're going to start saying no, when somebody else says no to you, why does it mean it's something against you? It doesn't. Sometimes it's just a matter of that's part of their boundaries. They may not have communicated it well, and a lot of people say, they said no, I'm hurt. There could be other reasons. So we have to be willing to accept other people's boundaries if we want them to respect ours. So start looking at responses that people have given you at other times and maybe how we could have reacted differently if we looked at it as a boundary of theirs rather than something against us, taking it personally. Let's open up that door. Maybe write down some different experiences that we've had in the past and examine it closer so we can start being more aware of how we're responding to someone else when they're setting limits for themselves. Which boundaries are you flexible on and in what circumstances? We can have different lists, one for work, one for friends, one for family. So our list of boundaries can change. If we have something that we're comfortable with our family, it might not be the same thing that we're comfortable with an acquaintance. Look at the differences in those. That's part of self-discovery. See where those spaces are. Take that time. Then it's about communicating them. Communication is key. I can't say it enough. But it can be difficult. It can be scary. It can be uncomfortable. If we've never really sat down to express ourselves to somebody before, it could be terrifying. Make a plan. Start with one person that you really trust, somebody you feel really comfortable with, even if you have to practice in the mirror first, just to see, how does it feel? Maybe that's uncomfortable for you, but you could sit down with your mom or a close friend and say, I want to practice this with you and give me some feedback, please. Once you've done it the first time and you expressed it, it gets easier. It starts to get more comfortable. And if you make a plan and write down, by this date, I'm going to achieve it, you may stick to it. And once you get over the first hurdle and give it a shot, then you'll start to feel like, I'm getting somewhere. It'll build your confidence. Trust me, I understand it's terrifying, especially when you've never done it before. But by making that commitment to yourself, it will get easier. Be prepared. What I mean by this is, you may get different reactions from each person that you communicate this with. Well, it's usually the reaction that we're afraid of. We can't control how somebody is going to react. We can only control how we react. So if you're prepared, then it makes it a little less scary. If you're prepared that somebody's going to react negatively, then maybe you're prepared with a list of questions as to why it's affecting them that way, to diffuse the situation. Or maybe you're prepared, if it's really strong negative feelings, to say, there's no room for understanding there, and I need to take a time out and walk away. I know how I'm going to handle the situation. I've looked at various scenarios. I'm prepared. It takes away some of the uncertainty, and that's a key to fear. Uncertainty will always make us nervous and anxious about what is going to happen. If you prepare yourself, write down the scenarios, look at them, practice, and then you're ready for the first trial run. How will I stand up and respect my own boundaries? We need to understand that, journal it, practice it. Say, how did it feel at the end of the day when I told somebody, expressed it, practice it? Did it make me feel better? Why not? It's a way to look into it a bit more. There are plenty of resources out there, and we're sharing them with you on our resource page, links, just to give you a much deeper dive into it. We're just touching the surface, and it could be a lot to take in all at once. So have a look at our resource page at www.hoperegain.com. What do you need help with? Connect with us. Let us know. We want to help bring you everything that we can to make it easier for you to rediscover your love for life. Subscribe here and on the platform that you listen to your podcasts, and share with those the link to this video if you think it would be helpful for them as well. And at the end of the day, we know we can all be better and live our life better. And we look forward to seeing you the next time on Hope Regained. Thanks for being with us.